Welcome to my podcast. Today's dream, tomorrow's reality. My name is Vicki Poole, and I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist, and I specialize in habit change. This podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach, and it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. So change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest with me today. But before I bring him out, I would love for you to leave a comment on this episode and do me a solid by remembering to like, subscribe, and share, because that is the way that I get this out to more people so that amazing guests like Marty here will be able to get their information out a lot more. So, with that said, because it's all up to you, now let's get started. So, this is Marty Dickinson. Let me get him up here. Hold on a sec. There he is. Yay. So, Marty, my pleasure. And I want to just tell everybody that I recently joined a group. It's a Speakers Speak group? That's it. On Facebook. And Marty happens to be the gentleman, I guess you created it or whatever. But it was like just connecting and just a little short way with him. There was something about his energy. There was just something about him that I figured he's got to have a really amazing story to have started this group. And I just wanted to share it. He agreed to get on here. So here we are.
Sure. Well, thanks again. Yeah, it's definitely been a long journey for sure. Lots of what I call pivotal moments that have brought me to this point. And Speaker Speak is not only just you attended the live event today, but we also have a group called Speaker Speak Group on Facebook. That's where everything kind of started. And since then, we've just been, it's totally free. We just needed, as professional speakers and people who are using speaking to build their business, we just needed some place to go that was safe and supportive, and we didn't have to worry about paying dues or monthly fees or anything like that. And so it just became a very exclusive group that has become a very inspiring family. So it's been a lot of fun to grow, and we're just about to come up to our 3rd-year anniversary, so we're very excited.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I've never seen anything, and I don't know how I even saw it when I did. It was like, oh, I think I want to join that group. Let me reach out. So I want to ask you, Marty. So how long have you been a speaker?
Oh dear. Well, I actually started my first business in 1996, and it took me a little while after that to realize that the best way that I could promote that business was to get on stages. And it was just really ever since then. Now, being a speaker and promoting my business and actually enjoying it are two completely different things. Because I am probably the least likely person you would ever imagine would use speaking to build a business or to ever get on a stage. So it took a long time. I realized the opportunity early, but it took me, actually, I'd say probably 6 years being in business before I looked forward to the opportunities to get on stages. It took that long. So
Wow. So what was your business?
Well, at that time, I was working in corporate America, and the internet really wasn't a thing yet. 1994, 1995, then 96 came along, and the internet was just starting to really dig in and take off. And I was just in corporate America doing the 3 things I told my mother I never wanted to do. I said, I never want to travel the country and be a salesman like my dad was. He would leave every Monday and he'd come back Friday. I'd never see him. Here I was, little kid, saying, "Where's dad? Where's dad?" So I knew I didn't want to be like that. And then the other thing was I I was terrible in accounting. I mean, one of the worst classes I ever took in college was accounting. I had to have a tutor and everything just for basic accounting 101. So I knew I didn't want to be an accountant. And the third thing was I really despised computers. I mean, I was the guy in high school when we took the computer class, which at that time was called basic. That's what it was. And we'd follow all these instructions, and then the teacher would say, okay, everybody hit your print key, and they'd hit their print key, and guess what? Everybody's would print, but mine, it would just get locked up somewhere. And oh, that Marty again, what did he do? And so we'd spend the rest of the time trying to figure out what in the world Marty did to screw up the whole computer. It was just, I knew I didn't want to be a traveling salesman. I knew I didn't want to be in accounting, and I knew that I did not want to have anything to do with computers. And by 1995, I found myself traveling, selling, accounting software. So I had everything I despised in my life that I was doing. It was just, and I just kind of looked within myself. I thought, do you really want to be doing this for your career? So I that's when I decided I needed to start my own business. And for those of you who are only listening to audio, there is a guitar standing in the corner of my studio here. And I have that to recognize and remember where this all came from, because I call myself a closet guitar player, which means you'd never hear me play out. I'm not that good. I just make a lot of noise, but I sure love to get together a bass player and a drummer. I just couldn't find any time to do that because I was always working. So I took out an ad in a local newspaper back then, a newspaper.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
What is that?
Yeah, and I was just looking for bass players and drummers, and accumulated a list of people. And that was the first business that I started. It turned into a musician referral. We put it onto the internet eventually in 1996. And then 6 months later, that website was making enough money to the point where on the day where I was brought into the VP of sales office at my corporate sales job, he says, well, we'd like to give you a promotion. I said, I resign. Because the way this was building, I mean, the internet back then, you launched practically anything. And if you were even halfway competent with promoting and sales and things like that, then you could get some visibility. And that's exactly what happened to us. And back then, it just went crazy. We became the largest musician referral in the whole country in a matter of months. So that was an exciting time. So that's how I got into all this.
Wow, that is exciting. Well, I want to go back just a bit, because you were saying that your father would leave on Monday and not come back till Friday, right?
Correct.
So as a kid, and that's happening, what's going on for you as a kid? I'm just curious, because my father was home all the time. I didn't have any of that experience. And so I would like to hear what was going through little Marty's mind.
Oh, well, I was an only child, so I think mom was around all the time, and so we were doing things, and I was in school and everything. So I don't remember anything particularly negative about that, other than I just don't remember that we did anything together until the weekend. So, but I knew every single Saturday when I got out of bed, Dad was going to be there. So I'd race down 6 o'clock in the morning. He probably got in at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and there I was jumping on his stomach as a 3 or 4-year-old, ready to go. Let's play, Dad. You're mine. I got you for the weekend. Let's go.
Yeah.
So,
well, that is pretty cool when you think about it, because, like with my dad, he was there all the time, but it didn't mean that we were doing stuff all the time. It meant that he was present in the house. And right. So, sometimes on a Saturday, he would take us and do things. I did have sibling. So it sounds like you got kind of the best of both worlds. Even though your dad wasn't there during the week, you had your mom all to yourself. And then on the weekend, you had your daddy at attention, right?
Right, that is a good way to think of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that it paid off in another way too, because Dad realized that one thing he and I could do together, at least in the winter, was ski. He got me into
Ah,
skiing at a very young age. I think I was like 3.5, maybe 4, and that carried with me through even today. I wound up moving out to Colorado 35 years ago with my wife, and we moved out here for the skiing. So skiing has been an active part of our lives ever since. And I think about Dad every time I go skiing and going through the woods, and I remember us skiing together, and all kinds of good memories that way. And I think that was one of our real ties that we had.
that's beautiful, really, you know? So let's get back up to speed here. I just all of a sudden I was thinking, poor little Marty, his dad wasn't around. Let me just find out how he was. And come to find out, you were pretty damn good, you know? I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad
Yep.
to hear it. So let's get back to you. Your speaking. You've just done all this promotion thing with this guitar and the music thing. So what happened then to get you to move more toward the speaking, or even like creating this group and putting other speakers together?
Well, gosh, I have to share one more fact
Okay.
about Dad, actually, because it,
Oh,
it
okay.
definitely ties into all that. He realized after about 5 years of this, that I think I was 7, he realized that I was growing up and he wasn't really around. So he decided that he was going to start a business. So he and Mom got together, and they decided. My dad sold printing presses. That's what he did for a living. So he thought, well, I've been working with printing presses for so long. I think I know something about the newspaper business. So we're going to move to a small town in upstate New York, and we're going to buy a little local newspaper. And that way he'd be home every day, have lots of time off. He'd be his own boss. He'd be able to set his own work hours. I mean, we hear this all the time when people want to start their own
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So he wanted to be able to do that. And we got up there, and they actually bought 3 newspapers. They were all
Wow.
tied together, these small town newspapers. And he found out, I'd say probably 2 weeks went by, and realized that the circulation of the newspaper was about a third of what they were promised when they bought this existing business. So you can just imagine that the revenue would be a third or even less than that. So he bought into a business that was already existing, that was failing, and didn't really have a lot of progress potential. So that was really what I remember the most about growing up, is growing up in a world where my parents were business owners and they struggled. I mean, when the
Ah,
government, when you send in your taxes and a check, and the government sends the check back to you and says, you need this more than we do. I mean, that's when you know your business is just not going
yeah.
anywhere. 5 years of this, and it was, we had a doctor that rented out the front of our house. We had a pretty large house for that time, and that really kept us afloat. But I got to see what it was like to really struggle, and I did get the bug about starting a business back then. But
Mhm.
I thought, if I ever did it, there's got to be a way to do it right, and not go into some of those perils that my parents went through. And that's what speaking really did for me, because I realized that there aren't too many ways out there to promote your business one to many.
Right.
It's always one to one. Even when you go to a networking group, you're walking around, you're talking to one person, then you schedule a call with that one person, then you go to another person, you schedule that call. It's exhausting. It really is. It's a lot easier to get in front of 100 people and solve a problem that they have. And you don't even have to sell anything. Just get on stage and talk about how you're able to fix this problem and give some solutions to people. They'll call you. They will seek you out if you do a good enough job as a speaker. So that's what I've always pursued, is just getting in front of any type of stage and saying, hey, let's really take a look at what you're challenges with your business and see if there's anything I can do to help about that. And you can do that in all kinds of ways today. Speaker Speak Live came about because we were on Clubhouse. The days of COVID were crazy for speakers. We didn't have a lot of places to go. A lot of us moved directly to Zoom because during the lockdown, all the events canceled. So we went to Clubhouse for our week to week. That was it's still there. It's just not as popular as it used to be, but it was kind of like getting on a free conference call with 100 or 1,000 or sometimes even 10,000 people at a time, and just having conversations like what we're doing now. It was all audio, but there was a woman, her name was Lois Kramer. I shouldn't say was, she's very much still around. Lois Kramer started a room on Clubhouse called Make Money Speaking. So I was just getting started with Clubhouse about the same time as she was. And we got together and we decided to co-host the room together. Did that for almost 2 years. We got to know each other very well. And then when things started opening up, we were already positioned to go back into the speaking environment. So that's how Speaker Speak Group and Speaker Speak Live evolved. And and this applies to every business. If you want to be successful in any business that you start, you need to be around other people who are doing what you want to do.
Right.
That was the premise behind the whole thing. And that's what we've discovered the most is how people, when you build a family together, when you build a group together, you're supporting each other in just amazing ways, not just referring back and forth with business, but just being there in case you have a question, people to go to and to freely answer those questions. That has meant so much in this growth process coming out of COVID for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I'm a hypnotist. And so before COVID, people didn't do hypnosis on Zoom. And it was like, I remember because I was in school before COVID hit, and so I was taught, you touch the person, you lift the hand, you do these different things. And it was like when I had to translate it onto Zoom, it was like, wait a minute, how does this work? I can't say, imagine I'm picking up your hand, how do I? So I had to learn to pivot. And I think that it has been amazing because now I have clients all over the country. I have some out of the country. And then I even have local people to me that choose to do Zoom because they don't want to deal with the traffic. And so it just opened up the ability to connect with so many more people that I've just been amazed. And I know COVID was horrible for so many people, but the things that it created and opened up for businesses and everything, it's just like,
Yeah, and it's always like that. I mean,
Yeah.
not just business, but relationships, health, all kinds of opportunities come out of the challenges that we have. And that's why I always go back to, those are pivotal moments. You can look at those events as being traumatic and tragic, and a lot of them really are. But if you can figure out a way to push through them and
Yeah.
learn from what you experienced, it makes you a stronger person. And you also are able to look at situations as they come to you in a different way too. So one of the things that we're really watching for now is what is happening in the business economy. So a lot of business owners that I work with are really afraid right now. They're really nervous about what's coming up in the next year, and they go home to their family and they have to put on a happy face, although not everything is as happy as it may seem. So they're really worried about, why are my sales declining? Well, and we're watching this and we're seeing a lot of the same things that we've seen since I started in my own business. We've been through at least 3 of these, right? Remember the real estate bubble burst in the 2000s?
Yeah.
That was another example. We had 9/11 happen, and crazy things happened after that, and everybody was really nervous. So we've been through this before, For somebody that just started a business and now they're really nervous, and it's the first time they've experienced any of this that's happening. And where did my sales go? I was doing
Yeah.
just fine when I started, and now 3 months into it, everything's evaporated. Nobody's buying anything. Well, yeah, we've been through that so many times. All you have to do is be around people who have been through that and find out, well, what are those triggers? What are those mechanisms? What are those strategies that allowed you to make those changes? And then getting through that is much easier. I really feel for people who think they are completely alone in their business.
Oh,
A business
mhm.
owner, a really lonely place if you do not have that support group of peers to be able to approach and to work with and to inspire. So that's something that we've been doing a lot of work with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will say today's the only time I've been to a meeting because I just joined the group, but I was really impressed. I have not been to a Toastmasters. I had it on my list, but it seems like I never had the ability to go because it was a physical place to go to. But I've been part of another group at one point that was a speaking group. And so I was, comparing a little bit with it. And I really loved the way you had everything done. And I really loved, and for anybody that's thinking about being part of this group, there was like, I was nervous because I'm not a speaker. I have done some little speaking things, but nothing big. And I want to, but it's just it's one of those, tight in my chest kind of moments. It's like I feel so out of my element. But I love to talk. So, but I loved that you had the room where you and I talked, and you said sometimes all the new people are there and there's sometimes a lot of them, but it was just you and I. So I got a little bit of an idea of what to expect and how things would go. And I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful thing that the first time people aren't just kind of thrown into the rooms with the other people. Because I was taking notes when you were talking, because I thought, okay, that means when I come up, I gotta be able to do all this. And so I was so relieved. And I just think it's beautiful. And I don't know what led you to decide to do that, but I would love to hear, because like I said, it was different from what I expected, and it's different than what I've experienced. And so if you ever questioned whether that's the right thing to be doing, it is. I'm telling you, because I felt so much cared for, and so much more relaxed because
Oh,
of
I
it.
appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's always a work in progress to figure out ways to make first timers welcome. It's very important to me, and I mean that actually came from Toastmasters. You brought up
Okay.
Toastmasters, and that came from there because Toastmasters has done so much for my life, my personal relationship with my wife and my family and my friends, as well as business. So, I mean, when I said it took me 6 years to get to the point of actually enjoying getting on stages, that was 6 years as a Toastmasters member. It was because of
Okay.
Toastmasters that finally, after all that time, I had to go into Toastmasters just to learn how to communicate. I was a mess when I got on stage. It was trauma from early childhood, bad memories of having to get up in front of the class and all this stuff. I mean, I learned how to write. That's what I learned how to do. I became a fairly proficient writer, and that got me through all the way through college without having to get on stage. I did a book report in seventh grade. That was it. I was able to get out of all the speaking opportunities or
Okay.
challenges that school provided until my senior year of college. And then I couldn't get away from it. It was just miserable. So when I graduated and started my first corporate job, one of the first things I did was join a Toastmasters club. And that was a total game changer. I would suggest anybody listening here that if I heard you say that when you get on stage, it sounded to me like you get really nervous. First of all, I'd suggest to you, and this is something that somebody taught me in Toastmasters early on, that being nervous is a good thing,
Hmm.
especially when you are on stage, because it just means you care. You care that you do your best for that audience. So instead of trying to figure out how to suppress your nervousness, be appreciative of that nervousness and use it to channel your energy and put your energy into doing a good job for that audience. I mean, I'm nervous every time I get on stage still. And if I'm not, I figure out a way to be nervous. I figure out something that happened. My favorite go-to is from a workshop I gave when I first started giving, multi-hour training workshops for internet marketing. That's how I built one of my businesses, was giving workshops, and then people in the audience would want to hire me for stuff. But I just remember walking in. I just got a brand new laptop, and I walked into this workshop, and I couldn't get the laptop to turn on. I mean, a 4-hour workshop where I'm supposed to be demonstrating screens, and this is how you do this. This is how you get your website on top of Google search. This is how you do better sales copywriting for your website. I had to demonstrate that. I had to show screens. 4 hours, no screens. It was just a total nightmare. And of course, somebody at the end came up at the end and they said, "That was the best workshop I've ever seen. I was so happy that you didn't use PowerPoint." I was like, what? Where does that even come from? But hey, that's some people like, just no matter what screens you have, they don't want to see any of that when you're speaking. But that's what I think of if I'm not nervous, because I really had to dig deep to do a good job for my audience on that day. And that's the state that I want to be in. Even now, I'm thinking before we came on to this interview, this podcast, I was thinking, oh no, let's see, how can I make myself nervous? Because there's only you and me. We're just having a conversation. But I know if I make myself a little bit nervous, I'm going to do the best job. My brain is going to be thinking quickly. I can feel it. That even we started, my brain was just a little bit slower than it is now. And now things are just cranking, so I'm ready to go. It's because I'm thinking about making myself a little nervous. So, this is the kind of thing that a person learns in Toastmasters. You go into Toastmasters to explore all these techniques for learning the skills of speaking in front of people. And there's leadership qualities in there, of course, too, but it's really mostly about learning how to craft a speech, how to deliver it, how to apply those skills to what you're doing, and overcoming that confidence issue. So if you're listening to this and you are just trying to find some way to become a more confident person in general in everything that you do, Toastmasters is the answer for you. There are thousands and thousands of clubs around the world, and they are eager to bring you in as a guest. So I'm always an advocate for Toastmasters. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've reached out to, there's one that I finally found, that one that was closer to me. And so my goal is to go, but it's like the business that I have, it seems like it conflicts with when they're meeting. And so I'm really working on trying to get that situated. So my goal is that if I don't get to one this month, I'm going next month, because I really want to experience it. Because, I get nervous doing it. Not in the podcast, I don't get nervous. And I guess it's because I'm not trying to remember anything. I don't have to remember questions. I don't have to do any of that. I'm just having a conversation. So I do fine with that. It's when I get to a place where I'm having to remember something and it has to be in a certain amount of time. And then it's like I get this angst within me, just to make sure I don't want to go over and I don't want to stumble over my words, that kind of thing. But I do better on a Zoom. But when you get me physically in front of the people, that's when the nerves really crank in. And one time I heard Tony Robbins was saying that the same feeling of fear and excitement feel the same. And so if you would just turn it into excitement, and that's why before he gets on, he does all the jumping jacks and he gets the heart pumping and all that stuff, so that when he gets out there, he's all pumped up, and I can't see myself backstage doing jumping jacks, but I can see myself trying to get one of those memories like what you have that would help me to get that feeling up and start looking at it more as excitement or a good thing instead of something that will hold me back. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's that's one component is getting over your nervousness and the confidence part. But I think and you would only know this once you actually join a club and you're with a club for a good club, a good Toastmasters club that you have been a part of for, I'd say, probably 6 months. It's not
Hmm.
something you go into for a month and then you're done. We have had people join and all of a sudden, they've got what they came for. They learned how to construct a speech and now they're off and running. And that's such a shame when that happens, because it takes some time for speaking to become a part of you. And
Yeah.
podcasts are different. If you do webinars, that's different. Standing in front of a group and speaking takes a while for that to be part of you. It's kind of like Taekwondo. There's reasons that they have belts through martial arts, because
Right.
there's not only learning the moves, but there's a time component as well, that all of those things build into your personality and who you are. So it takes a while for speaking to become part of you. And that's why what'll happen is you'll see a transition where when you start, you think, oh, I have to remember all this and I have to use notes and all, note cards, whatever it is. But then as you are a member for a longer period of time, you start just getting used to it. You start getting used to rehearsing and you come up with your own sequence of how you put a presentation together. And when you start, these are only 5 to 7 minute talks as well. So you can really just go like a day before, put it together, practice it that day, and then the next day. You don't have to put in weeks and weeks and weeks of practice into that. That's not the point at all. But you'll get used to what you do need to do to prepare and what length of time that is. So you start realizing, okay, so I can do the same thing and I'll get that result the same. Now, what happens if I add another couple of hours of preparation? What happens if I
Mm.
somebody on Zoom that's part of my club and I give that speech first and then they give me some tips and then I come in the next day and do it for real in front of people? And there's all kinds of things you can experiment with that way. And in your beginning years of speaking to audiences like that, that is so important. So I strongly suggest that really everybody who's in business, I wish that everybody who's in business, when you get your business license, there should be a little check mark on there. Yes, I have joined a Toastmasters club. Literally, I mean, when I first joined a club, when I moved out here to Colorado, I had like 3 years between one Toastmasters club where I lived out east and then out here. And it took me a while to get back to Toastmasters. When I started my business, I went into Toastmasters and my sales for my business that I started literally tripled
Wow.
in 2 months. 2 months. That was all. And it wasn't because of giving better speeches or any of that. It was because I started listening to what I was saying with people. When I was on the phone, I started recording my phone conversations. What did you say? That made absolutely no sense. But that's another thing you learn at Toastmasters is
Yeah.
how to listen to people as they are giving presentations. So I started listening to myself. And so there are just so many benefits to that. And I just, again, I'm always an evangelist for Toastmasters and for personal growth. I mean, I just think we should all be evolving and challenging ourselves in that area for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I have a friend that she's a big proponent of Toastmasters, but I'll have to share that she's a keynote speaker and all these different things, but she does great with that. But I had to help her with hypnosis because when she would go to networking things, she wanted to sit in the corner and she'd sweat if anybody came up and talked to her because she
Wow.
said, I can be prepared and I can get up there and I can talk without a problem. She said, but put me in a place where I don't know what the question's going to be or anything like that. She said, I can't do it. So I worked with her, and after just one session, she was high-fiving people and talking to people she didn't know, and everybody's waving at her. She even got up on stage, and they asked her some questions. She didn't know what the questions were going to be, and she just had the time of her life. And so she messaged me right after she got finished with this networking thing, said, oh my God, Vicki, you're not going to believe this experience I just had. And so, but like she said, as long as I'm prepared, I do fine. But when I'm not prepared for something, everything just blew her away, and she just couldn't react. She always wanted to just hide. And so it's interesting because you can have the skill for that and then still need to work on something for the skill in another arena too. So the thing that made me just bring it up is that a lot of times we think, like you said, some people will go to just a few meetings and they think, okay, I'm good. But it's like, if you stop there, then oh my gosh, what blessing, what amazing thing could you have learned and created in your life if you'd kept going? And I think a lot of people do that. It's kind of like the medicine thing, I feel better. I don't need it now.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's just ongoing. I mean, here we are, 2024. I am still a member of Toastmasters today. I belong to a club called Professional Presenters Toastmasters. So it's all made up of professional speakers, but yet we practice a lot of the same things that most Toastmasters clubs practice. And it's why would we do that? It's because you never stop growing as a
Right.
speaker or as a communicator. And also because, I mean, you're talking about your friend that was at this networking event. I have come to find through the years in becoming really good close friends and colleagues with professional speakers around the country and even in 6 other countries. So we have lots of participants from all over the place in Speaker Speak Live. And one thing I've realized is, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a surprising amount of professional speakers who are actually introverts.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that when they get on stage, it's kind of like that old movie, the Sylvester Stallone movie, Over the Top, the one where he was an arm wrestler. He's a trucker, and he'd do arm wrestling competitions at truck stops, and he'd sit down at the arm wrestling bench, and he'd turn his hat around. And then all of a sudden, he became this monster machine. Well, that's how professional speakers are a lot of times. They are introverts. They just want to be in their basement away from people. Just let me do my own thing and watch a movie.
Yep. Yep.
But then when they get on stage, something happens.
They turn their head around.
They turn that hat around. So don't assume that just because you see somebody on stage that they're a type A person, and of course they're on stage. They're this superstar, love to be all that attention and everything. That is not the case in a lot of times. That is not the case. So I'm speaking to your audience here. If you have a business, or if you're working in corporate America and you're looking for a promotion, the best way to build your business and get a promotion and really make a difference wherever you work or volunteer or relationships you're in, the single thing everybody can do is to improve their presentation skills and just make that part of your life. You just might not even realize where that's going to come into play until it actually happens. So that's my challenge to everybody.
It's a good challenge because it is definitely the truth. I mean, we have to communicate in everything we do, whether it's with our spouses, our kids, the grocery store clerk, the waiter. We have to, there's a communication aspect of it. And if you get confident in speaking, then you can articulate your words. And I will share that, there's been times in my life that I would need to speak up about something to someone and I wouldn't do it. And the main reason was because I felt like I couldn't articulate what I wanted to say properly. And so that's where this kind of thing comes in, because if you're a speaker, you learn the art of being able to articulate your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions in a way that people can grasp and understand, because that's the main thing. To the people that you talk to, they really understand what you're talking about, right?
Well, I think what happens too, at least for me, and I've seen this happen with multiple people as well, is that once you let speaking become a part of you, like I was mentioning before, opportunities happen. They just start happening. And where that opportunity starts is is you start wanting to share more. You have to kind of dig deeper after you've been, like Toastmasters again, I'm kind of harping on that, but you're kind of forced to come up with topics to speak about over
Mm-hmm.
time. And so you have to start digging deep and saying, what would I say about that topic? How do I develop a speech around that? But what that does is it starts to open up your brain to search for your own value. I always like to say that, if you've been alive for more than 10 years, you are an expert in something. I mean, everybody is. Everybody is an expert. If absolutely nothing comes to mind, at least you are an expert in being alive for as long as you have been alive. Nobody has lived your life. Nobody has survived all the challenges you have been through. Only you have done that, and there is a method behind that. There is a
Mm-hmm.
method in that expertise, and I call that your GEM. It stands for Genuine Expert Method. You can buy methods out there. You can be somebody else's expert with using their expert advice and experience, but eventually even those systems that you buy into become your own, because you start adding things and experiencing things that weren't taught in that class or that course or from that speaker, and you start applying that, and all of a sudden you sort of deviate from that method and it becomes yours after a while. And that's what people are willing to pay for. They're willing to pay for your services to help you through that method. They're willing to buy your book, and they're willing to come see you speak and pay a ticket price to come see you speak sometimes. So that's why I call it a gem, GEM,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what people are willing to pay for to see and be around, is that method. So I challenge, my second challenge is once you start assembling those butterflies that are flying around, you're getting more confident in what you're doing, you're becoming a better speaker, and you're being challenged by topics to speak on. Start really trying to develop your genuine expert method. That's how you build businesses, because you always hear about people saying, well, what's your outcome? What's your promise, your unique selling proposition, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, people want the outcome. That is true. But what they're really investing in when they invest in you is your method. So it's so important as a business owner to come up with what is that genuine expert method that you supply. So I love where
Ah,
this conversation's going. That's fun stuff
yeah,
to talk
yeah. I love that. I love that. I
about.
was going to write it down, but I thought I'm going to have to re-listen anyway. So I don't want to miss anything, because I love that, because, I just was in a program yesterday, and it's all about, what is your end result? How are they going to feel when they get to that end result and everything? But I love that. I love that, because, other people could get them that result. But it's you're the influence there. You're the catalyst. I love that.
Well, there's
Hmm.
one more piece to it too, and
Okay,
that is
share, please share.
that is for those listening to just audio, there is a picture on my wall of a dog. And that dog
It's a cute
it's not
dog.
my dog. It has a purpose. It came from my original book called Winning the Internet Dogfight. That is the first book I wrote in 2004. Don't go
Hmm.
try to buy it. It's way out of date, but I think I'm the only one left from production on my wall sitting there. And on that cover is a picture of this dog winning the internet dog fight. Well, I was going around to a lot of conferences at that time, and I was doing a lot of speaking with multiple speakers on stage, and every single one of them would say, now everything I just told you is going to be worthless unless you take action. So take action, make sure to take action. And I finally it's like, who is this person they keep talking about, and why do they want me to take him? Why? So I finally put a name to a face, and that is action. So that is my mascot. Every place I go, every interview I'm on, every podcast, every stage that I'm on, every client site that I go to, I am always taking action. So I say, next time you find yourself procrastinating, remember this face and
Hmm.
take action. So people call me, you like 3 months later, and they'll say, "Well, I can't remember what you talked about, but you're the guy with the dog, right?" Very sticky. It's
Yeah.
very sticky, and it's one of the great suggestions that it was given to me a long time ago, and that is to create a mascot. Figure out what the core of your content, the core of your gem, all of it. What does it really come back to? And it's always for me about taking action. I can share all the great things about how I built 3 businesses in 27 years, but unless you have that thumb in the back to
Hmm.
get that gentle nudge to take action, all of that is just talking about fun
Fluff.
stories and
Yeah.
entertainment. And the world needs action. The world really needs to put things into a sequence, do things at the right time, have the right budget to be able to do them with, and just plow forward and make it happen and go through that sequence, because that's just so important to anything that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. And it brings up to mind, there's a whole lot of people that have adopted the mindset of the law of attraction to the level that and they
Right.
expect the things to fall out of the sky. And even when the law of attraction, if you listen to all of it and you read all of it, it's not like just pie in the sky. It's like if you listen, you get this inspiration that you act on. And so I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss because they're they're afraid to think about certain things because that means I don't believe, and in actuality, your subconscious mind thinks you're full of, what, because you're sitting there and you're waiting on it and you're not doing anything to make it happen.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit to add on to that as well. For about 5 years or so, when I would talk to a prospective client, they
Hmm.
call me on the phone, and I would very quickly say the equivalent of, "Well, what do you want?" I can't help anybody until I find out what what they actually want. So I had to create a process for this.
Hmm.
I had to essentially help people figure out what it is that they want. And then we can move forward from there. So I wrote a book about it, actually. First, I wrote the process, and then I'd send it to people, and I'd say, fill this out. Take the weekend, fill this out, and then send it back to me. And then we'll have a conversation about how I might be able to help. And that turned into a book called Lions Always Win: How to Spot What You Want in Your Business and Life and Get It Too. So that launched right before, 2 weeks before COVID shut down the country
Ah,
or
that's
the world,
perfect
I guess.
timing.
Don't ever launch a book 2 weeks before a international disaster. But a couple years later, I wrote another one, and it was the same concept, and that one was for professional speakers. So the only difference is it has a slant toward the professional speaking business. But in that book, I go through extensive detail about how to figure out exactly what you want. And there's a portion in there that defines why people don't get what they want. And I termed it as a, um, a chief executive bully. Your CEB. Now, this is a person that you have grown up with. They know you sometimes better than your parents do, because that person, that bully, has been with you, sitting on your shoulder through every event. You can't just get rid of the person. You can't fire him. He's going to be with you, but you can work with that person to align together a little more as time goes on. So that's really what you brought up, just triggered that in my mind, that it's really a sticking point with people, that they bring this baggage with them from being 2, 3, 4 years old even, and that bully is saying, you're not good enough to do that, you're never going to make that happen, you are just too slow and have no ambition to take that action that you really need. Are you kidding? Why are you even thinking about doing that? It is just paralyzing. It is
Hmm.
paralyzing to
Yeah.
so many people, and it was for me too. I had to figure out, how to align with my own chief executive bully years ago. But I think there's a real need for that as well, to recognize that and say, okay, I'm going to take action. I'm going to do these series of steps. I've got my gem,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the thing sitting on my shoulder, how can I move through that? It's very important to confront that chief executive bully.
Yeah, I agree. And the experience that I have when I ask my clients, what do you want? Oh, they'll start with a litany of things, but it's all what they don't want. And,
Mm,
and I have to stop them and say, wait a minute, I didn't ask you what you don't want. Let's see if we can turn that around and what do you want? And that really takes a lot of, back and forth talking to them, trying to get them to figure it out, because it's like, our natural tendency is to just go ahead and fly off. Well, what kind of person are you looking for? I can tell you what I don't want. I don't want somebody that's like this or like that. And it's like we just are so used to telling people what we don't want or what's wrong in our lives. And it's really a bigger thing to actually look at it on the other side.
yeah, and it's important to be realistic too. I mean, you can really attain any level of any goal that you want in life. That's not what I mean, but you have to be realistic about it. Like I work with a lot of new speakers, people that are just getting into the business, and I'll be one of the first people they talk to about how to make that transition. They're working at a full-time job, and then they'll say, well, how do I get started in speaking so that one day I can retire from my job and just speak all the time? So my first question is, well, based on your commitments at home, based on what you're doing at work, how many speaking dates do you think you'd like to have in your first year? Well, there's this pause. And I think about it for a minute, and then one of the most common answers that I'll get is, and this is astonishing, but they'll say 100. Now, can you imagine working a full-time job, having kids at home, maybe being a coach of a little league team or whatever it is? You've got all these other commitments, and you even have the thought that you're going to be a speaker 100 stages over the next 12 months. It's
Wow.
really honestly just not realistic unless tomorrow you're going to quit your job. And even then, I mean, you have to build the track record. It usually takes 2 or 3 years to really start developing as a professional speaker and getting on those stages and starting to earn income from it. And there's definitely a lot of realistic pieces to that pie. It can be done, but it is like starting any other business. You've got to have a real got to have fortitude, and you've got to have that drive to do this for the long term. So when I hear things like that, those kind of numbers, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, how is that going to affect everything else that you're doing? I mean, do you still want to be married? You're going to
You still want to be
100
a parent?
kids all over the country or around the world, and I mean, you want your kids to remember your name. I mean, there's just all these things to consider, and so part of this process is to put together a realistic plan. I know you were talking about speaking a lot, but it's really anything that you want to do, any job you have, any career you want. If you're even a student and you're thinking of all the options of what you could be doing, all those things have to be honestly written out. I mean, you have to go to like a coffee shop for about 5 or 6 hours or so, and just follow a guide. That's what my book actually suggests, that people do that. They
Okay.
just take the darn book with you and start working through it. But you got to go someplace and just put your whole plan on paper and write, just like what you said, where people were coming in with all these negatives that they had. Well, write all those down. Say, this is what I don't want. This is what I don't want, all the way down, multiple pieces of paper, just fill it up, and then turn those around, because that's a great way to figure out what you really do want, is to suggest on paper the opposite. Well, if I don't want to be 100 pounds overweight, then what does that mean? Well, I want to be I want to be at the right weight that I should be. And what's it going to take to get there? Do I have to take any classes or hire a coach to do that? What are what's required to get that one that I want to strive for? So all those things need to be thought out and carefully planned. Well, they don't have to. You don't have to do any of that.
That's right.
You can go to your grave and never
Depends on what
accomplish
you want,
what
right?
you want to do. But hey, if you want to live with intentionality in your life, that is something that, once a year, once a quarter, whatever it turns into for you, it's certainly worth it to spend that time just all by yourself. Tell your family, I've got to go do this. I'll be back for dinner. I'm not bringing my phone, none of that stuff. You just have to have that secluded time at various intervals throughout the year. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. My daughter, when she was in high school, I used to think, what in the world? Because she was the only child at home and it was just me. So it was quiet. It would be easy to go sit in your room and study or whatever, but she always wanted to go to the coffee shop or somewhere so that she got out of the house and away. And since I've been doing more things where with my coaching and doing online and everything, I now get that. It's like a break state, you do that in conversation sometimes. What'd you have for breakfast? Whatever, just to break the whole thing. And it gets you out of your area of where you normally are, puts you in another place. And so your thought pattern's a little bit different and you can come up with amazing things. I really like not only doing that, but I can go for a walk and I keep my phone with me and I use my notes and I will just be talking to my notes and I won't say her name because if I do, she'll pick up and start recording my conversation now. But when I would ask her, and I would tell her that to put on my notes. And then, so I've got my phone and I'm not having a conversation with anybody. I'm just walking and talking into my phone because the amazing things that come to me when I'm walking. And in the beginning, I used to think, I'll remember that. That is so good. When I get back, I'll remember that. And I'd walk in the house and I'd think, what was that thing? It was so good. It was so good. So now I take my notes with me. And so that going to the coffee shop opens me up in the same way to where I can just, things come. I don't know. But so my daughter, I thought was like, I don't get it, but yeah, this is definitely true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a lot of us, especially me, if I'm home and I'm just sitting in a recliner and I tried to do that with the TV on or something, I'd just fall asleep. I mean, I'd be out going into a public environment where there's people coming in and babies are crying and all that kind of, I mean, it just kind of keeps your brain moving and you're to be focused about what you're doing. And then my favorite place to go is Panera. So there's always coffee there and there's some French onion soup to get and things like that, so just keep you sharp. So you need to find what your place is that really inspires you to be productive. And whenever I do that annual review of what happened last year, where I want things to go this year, I always go to the same place. I never go to a different place because I know exactly how my brain is going to react when I'm in there. And I think that over the years, just the repetition of it all, my brain realizes, oh, you're here. So you're going to do
that's setting an anchor so that when you go there, it already thinks, okay, it's time.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. So do you have your book where you can show your book?
Oh, yeah. Here, this is the speaking book. Lions Always Win: How to Spot What You Want in Your Professional Speaking Business and Life and Get It Too. And then there's the other one up there that is a different lion.
Okay. Well, so if you would, now I'm going to be getting all your information and putting it in the description. So it'll be here with the podcast on all the platforms. But for those that are listening now, if you could maybe tell them how to reach you, how to get the book. And then anybody that's listening and you don't have time to write it down or jump on your phone and get it, it will be in the description so that you can go back and see that later.
Sure. A couple places you can go. My main company name is Here Next Year. Just got tired of everybody asking if I'd be around in 6 months. And that was about 25 years ago or so when I came up with that. So you can always go there and reach me there. You can also go to martydickinson.com. And let's see, for the book, that is on Amazon. So just search for Lions Always Win, comes right up. You can also go to lionsalwayswinbook.com, and that will take you there. And find me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So connect with me there, and let's have direct message chat. I love chatting and answering any questions. A lot of people are very closed off, and if you want to just have a question answered, they say, okay, well, give me your credit card. I am not like that at all. I love sharing what I've learned. We've got a traveling, well, I call it a do shop. It's not just a workshop. It's more hands-on than a workshop. It's a 6-hour program. Sometimes I have a specialty speaker do a part of it, but most of the time it's just me. It's called Sell More in 24. So you can go to sellmoreinto24.com and see the locations across the country that we're visiting and putting on this program. You will walk out of there with 120 plus ways to attract sales opportunities for your business. It's not about closing the sale or handling objections or anything like that. It is about getting more sales opportunities. We are also going to do a 6-week online course with that program as well. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to access it. But that is where I'm putting all my passion right now, is into working with business owners to discover more ways to have sales opportunities come to them. So it's very, very exciting year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
To be a business owner. So if you have any doubts, then that would be my main message, is this is a great time in history to be a business owner for sure.
Perfect. I love that. And so are you going to be in the Atlanta area?
I have not talked to anybody in Atlanta yet, but I am always open. We are talking to people in Florida, so maybe there's something we could swing by and go to Atlanta. Actually, I have relatives in Atlanta, so that would be a
Okay. Yeah.
place.
I'm north of Atlanta, about 40 minutes north of Atlanta. But yeah.
That is an open invitation to anybody. I will go anywhere inside the US. If you have connections and would like to host a Sell More in 24, then I'll make you look like the star. I'm just coming in to do my part, but it's your show. That is how I'm putting together all these locations around the country, is just having somebody local be the host, and then I fly in, do the thing, and then I'm out of there. And the person that hosts is, wow, that was a great program.
Oh wow. Well, we need to talk. We'll just see if that seems like a possibility. But it definitely, I'm thinking, oh, I'm liking this. Well, Marty, it has been so insightful to have you here today, and I really appreciate you agreeing to get on here when you really didn't even know who the hell I was, and to do that was remarkable. And I appreciate you. And like I said, you have given me a lot of insights and things to think about, and that I'm very grateful.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I want to leave everybody with this very last word. The best way to predict the future is create it. What are you creating? And I'll leave you with that. Mwah.